in the house. Welcome. Great song. I've not heard that, but I will check it out. Add it to the Spotify list. Alexia says, seek to learn people's stories and perspectives. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anyone else want to share in the chat or feel free to come off mute?
So for me, sorry, wow, I did not expect my voice to come out like that.
All good.
For me, it's 6, say the thing. So often, even in small conversations with colleagues, right? It's like, let's just say it like it is. Let's own up to it, let's acknowledge it, and then let's work towards it. And for me, that one is huge.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And also, just so we can get to know each other a little bit, can you say your name for us just verbally? And then for other folks, if you come off mute, please share your name first with us so we get to know each other. So thank you for sharing. Is it Nicole? Beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Nicole. Anyone else? Which agreement is really speaking to them? And would love for you to tell us why. Awesome. If you didn't get a chance to share, all great. One of the ones that I love that really is my focal point today is what's said here stays here, what's learned here leaves here. And as any DEI experience, it's only as good as the work and the action that we put in. And so this is to help encourage us, not to just take all the notes, not just to like find a cool hashtag, but actually to go live this out and do the work outside of this space. So thank you for grounding in that activity. Let's go ahead and jump in. So here's our agenda for this morning. We're going to start with some grounding and really get an understanding of our why. We're then going to look at a case study analysis, and then followed by some self and school assessment and reflection. Followed by that, we're going to have some work time and action planning time. And then at the end, we are going to have a raffle and giveaway so that you can earn a free 60-minute virtual DEI session for your organization or for your school. Okay, so just so I know like who's in the room, can you put a S if you are a school leader? So if you are a like principal, AP, dean, counselor, school leaders, put an S. If you are a teacher, classroom teachers, go ahead and put a T in the chat. If you are a district leader, can you go ahead and put a D in the chat? Let us know like who's in the room, just so I know like how to kind of guide our conversation today. Beautiful. Okay. Love it. So we're a room full of educators. Ooh, I'm with my people. It feels good this morning. Oh, I love y'all. So let's jump into the work. And let me tell you a little bit about Teach Woke. So I know many of you follow us on social media. And if you don't, hey, y'all, welcome. But Teach Woke is an education consulting firm, and we provide exceptional workshops, coaching, and curriculum to schools, nonprofits, and organizations to center and advance diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are located and based in Houston, Texas, but we work in schools and districts all across the country. And we are a proud Black woman-owned business and woman-led business enterprise. And so to learn more about the work that we do and our team, please visit teachwoke.com. We would love to connect with you. Send us a DM, send us an email. We're always happy to support you. And so you're probably wondering like, well, she hasn't introduced herself. Who is this woman with all this energy at 10 a.m. CST? My name is Alicia Williams. I see some familiar faces already, so it's just good to see y'all, and thank you for showing up and supporting. But for those who do not know me, my name is Alicia Williams. Personal pronouns are she, her, hers. I have the privilege of serving as the founder and CEO of Teach Woke and my newest ed tech company, Justly. I'm a former educator. So I'm a former middle school teacher. Middle school is my jam. Love it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But I additionally was a Teacher of the Year, National Teaching Award winner, and so many other things. But the reason that I do this work are for these little humans in this picture. So follow me on the screen. Let me just give you like a 30-second story of why I do this work. So follow me from the top right corner to the left side of the screen. So these are my babies, y'all. These are my students that I taught in 5th and 6th grade. We created the first Black student union at my campus, and it was life-changing. And so I think about my students. Some of these students in this picture are now juniors in high school, which makes me feel really, really old when I taught them in 5th grade. But they're the reason that I do this work. In 2021, I transitioned out of the classroom, from classroom to CEO, to launch and lead Teach Woke full-time, to work with educators all around the country and really help them understand their practices, their biases, and really making sure that the work that we're doing around DEI is sustainable. I love to travel when I'm not wearing my CEO hat and my all the hats that I wear. I love to travel. Also, elephants are my favorite animal. This was me in Thailand a couple years ago. It was beautiful. And this is a recent picture, this picture here at the bottom of me and my students that are now 11th and 12th graders and or 11th and 10th graders and high schoolers, which is wild. I went to their rivalry basketball game a couple weeks ago. And I thought about, it was such a grounding experience because they remind me of why I do the work. Because there are still so many issues in education that I want to help them be able to live in a world where they are free to do whatever they wish to do. And so to see them all grown up, to see them still connected is really such a proud moment for me as an educator, and centers me every day as I lead Teach Woke and Justly to make the world a better place for them tomorrow. So thank you for letting me share part of my story with you. We'll talk a little bit more later about who I am, but just wanted to give you an overview of why I'm here and why I'm doing this work. So let's jump in. This morning, we are talking about cultivating communities of inclusion and care. For some of us, that may be a new topic, or we might not really understand what that means. I hope by the end of today's experience that you're clear and have some concrete action steps that you can take to truly build communities of care and inclusion. And so, to ground us, I want to start and root us in some data around the current state of education today. I'm going to give us a few minutes just to process and analyze some of these data points and pictures and news articles. And then I would love for us to come off mute and have a conversation around what are the things that you see, you think, and you wonder about some of these statistics and some of this data. So I'll go on mute for a minute for us to process. And then I would love for some folks to come off mute or share in the chat what is coming up for you as you look at these points. If you're still processing and looking, totally fine. You can take a screenshot of this. But I would love for us to come off mute and share or type in the chat. What are some things that stand out to you? What does this make you think about? What does this make you wonder? What questions do you have? So whoever wants to start, just go ahead and introduce yourself for us, please, and share what's coming up for you as you look at some of these points.
I can come off mute. I haven't fully processed, so my things are not going to be very deep right now, but right, just looking at suspension rates, and it made me think of our own district, right? I work in the largest district in Canada. And so when I was going through our data, our suspension rates and our literacy targets, it's the same disproportions up here, right? So our Black, Latinx, and Indigenous students are most disproportionately presented in suspension rates and are least likely to be reaching literacy targets for grade appropriate, whatever. So it matches across the board.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And help me pronounce it one more time. Anjali. Anjali.
Yeah.
Anjali. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you, Anjali, for sharing. Alexia says suspension rates are higher for Black and Latino students. However, students are not seeing themselves in the literature. They're reading based on book bans in the US. Absolutely. Thank you, Alexia, for bringing some texture and some light to that. Yes, for sure. Anyone else? Yeah.
Hi, Nicole. So I've been working at an independent school for about 3 years now, very different. I worked at a New York City public school for a while before that. And so a lot of these things have aligned regardless of whether I was working in a large city like New York City or in a smaller city like Syracuse, across the board throughout. And it just reminds me of a lot of the data points that I need to look at and use within my own school community right now in order to engage in these conversations and engage in this work with evidence to back up a lot of what's being said.
Yeah. Thank you, Nicole. So I appreciate y'all's insight on just looking at some of these really stark numbers and data. And some of these are true in our own districts and our own schools. And what it makes me think about is the work that we're doing every day. Like there are educators like you and I that are fighting to dismantle a lot of these systems, and also thinking about how does this help or hinder inclusion and belonging in schools, right? Like how safe are we actually creating communities of care and inclusion if suspension rates are these numbers and book bans are happening and teachers' mindsets and beliefs have so many things that are deep rooted in them. And so I really want to start here for us to begin to unpack how can we create more safe and inclusive, caring spaces for the young people that we serve. As I was getting prepared for today's conversation, I wanted to share with you something that really startled me. Like when I'm doing research, when I'm reading, I really nerd out at like some of the numbers and statistics. And so I won't bore you there, but something that just jumped and leapt off the page for me that brought me to tears was this number right here. And it's 52%. Over half of all students of color and low-income students report that they sometimes, frequently, or all the time wonder, maybe I don't belong in school. And y'all, I'm getting teary-eyed right now thinking about this reality. Also thinking about the numbers of suspensions and book bans and all of these things and how this number, I'm sure if they asked students in 2023, this was done in 2021, I believe, I wonder what the response would be. And are we getting further away from belonging and care? Or are we getting more close to it? And so today, I want us to be mindful of these numbers, not as a place of fear, but as a place of like opportunity and hope for like the work and the excitement that we can do as educators in our schools and systems. So my question that I want to first ask to the group and I want us to process is like, why does belonging matter for student learning and success? So I'll give us a moment to process, and like you can type this in the chat or you can come off mute, but why does this matter in the first place? And I'll give folks some processing time. Would anyone like to add some voice to this or type some thoughts in the chat? Why does belonging matter for learning and student success? Yeah. It matters because they will be more invested in the activities at school, and if we take more risk, if they feel, and we'll take more risk if they feel they belong in the community and classroom. Alexia, thank you for sharing that. For sure, definitely. Anyone else? Oh, feeling like you belong, feeling safe in a space. I had one student put it as feeling like I have room to breathe. Oh, that's so good. Yeah, only allow students to be more engaged in their learning, helping them in the long run build skills that will help them later in life. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. So we know that belonging matters, right? I love that. I have room to breathe, just fully exhale, right? And so as we think about the work of this session, as we think about the work that's left even this year that we can still do to create more belonging in our schools. We're going to learn some strategies today that are going to help us do that. So here are our objectives. And so I would love for someone to come off mute if you are a former, current, if you have ever taught, well, I used to teach science. Let's do science. Do I have any like science educators, science, STEM, math, engineering? If you've ever taught one of those subjects, would love for you to read our objectives for us, please. Anjali, thank you for sharing. Yeah. Tisa, I see you also in the chat. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's so good. I really appreciate y'all sharing that. Yep, absolutely. Not seeing yourselves in curriculum has a positive. They have a chance to increase engagement. Absolutely. Thank y'all for that. All right, let's go to ELA. Any ELA, former ELA, like reading is your jam, like that's your favorite subject, maybe in school, or maybe you taught it as an educator. There's always like one or two ELA folks, typically. Tisa, will you jump off mute and read our objectives for us, please?
What was the question? Sorry.
Can you jump off mute and read our objectives, what we're gonna walk away with today?
Most definitely. We will analyze how inequities persist within our own mindsets, school policies, staff, and practices. Review research-based practices that educators can use to promote care, inclusion, and belonging. We will implement one strategy we learned today within the next 7 days in our school/role.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We are all about implementation. Like, again, this is not a sit and get. If you leave with one thing that you can implement within the next week, we will feel like, yes, we've done something, we're making some progress and getting 1% better. So let's jump into the work. So to start us off, I want to kick us off with a reflection. Again, building our context, building our foundation as we go and really get more in depth here. So think of a time when you felt like you didn't belong somewhere. This can be in your K-12 schooling experience, or maybe higher ed, or just maybe in your career, right? So we're going to take about the next 4-ish minutes here. But I want you in your handout, if you need access to that, you can find it here in the chat. But I want you to think about a time where you didn't belong. How old were you? What impact did this have on you? And how are you currently creating a school community where students feel care and belonging? So let's take the next 4 minutes to work through this question. I will play some light music in the background and we'll come back together in 4 minutes. Here we go. Is where you're supposed to be. So we can pause on that right now. You'll have access to this material so you can finish working this up, working on this a little bit later. But I want to open it back up to us whole group. And because we're a smaller group this morning, I want to give us choice. If you want to partner with someone in a breakout room, or if you want to stay whole group, definitely open to that. So if you would like to break out, just put a B in the chat. If you want to stay whole group, go ahead and put a W in the chat. Either one works for me, but we will go with the majority here. All right, so looks like we're staying whole group. Beautiful. So I'm going to, throughout the session today, be like sharing my screen, stop sharing the screen just so that we can see each other just a little bit more. So I'm going to stop sharing for just this moment and would love for us to come off mute and share your experience about a time where you didn't feel like you belonged. Like, how old were you? What was the impact, etc. So as you feel led, feel free to type in the chat or come off mute and share your experience with us. And thank you again. Thank you in advance for your bravery, because this is not always easy. So thank you in advance for that. Would anyone like to kick us off? I can start. And I believe in using myself as an instrument and like sharing part of my story. So a time that I didn't belong, I remember I was in 3rd grade, and at my school, every year we had to go to swimming lessons at the local natatorium. And I remember this was like the first time that I like really just felt like an outsider. And I remember going to swimming lessons. I was so excited to go, but I had to wear a swimming cap. to give you some more context, I went to predominantly white schools growing up in Ohio, and there was less than 3% Black students in the entire district. And I was one of maybe 5 Black students in my entire school. And so having to wear my swimming cap, I remember this girl, her name was Haley. I don't know why you never forget people's names, but Haley made fun of me because I had to put on my swimming cap, because I was told by my mom I couldn't get my hair wet, and like it was a whole thing. But I remember like her laughing and like ridiculing me in this moment. And I felt like, first of all, I didn't want to go swimming anymore. But I just felt like I didn't belong like at this class. I wasn't supposed to be there because my hair was different or because I had to wear the swimming cap. And that has stuck with me decades later, right? Which I'm unlearning in therapy. But either way, that moment made me feel like I didn't necessarily belong. And there were other moments throughout my schooling experience where I felt like I was always the only one in my science classes and at Ohio State, you know, being pre-med, or even in my experience in a working world as a professional, right? And so there's so many instances that I could share with you, but that one really stuck to mind. Like my first experience where I thought I didn't belong was back in 3rd grade.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole. I wanted to give everybody a moment just in case I didn't want to be the first person every time. For context, I grew up in Los Angeles, Mexican American, but in a relatively affluent neighborhood. So many of my peers were white and many of my friends were white. And so often it was actually hard for me to pinpoint one moment, because often because I look somewhat Eurocentric, there would be confusion around my background. And so when people would find out that I was Mexican, the next response was often say something in Spanish to prove it. And so I'm sorry, I'm like, my voice is crazy today. So it became a really sensitive topic that I still struggle with today because of, I think, a lot of the nerves. And so in my first teaching job, I was working with students from the Dominican Republic, and it was like a whole new world. Like I felt seen by people that I had never been seen before. And so a lot of the work that I do today, I'm so sorry. A lot of the work that I do today is because it made me feel seen. It made me feel comfortable. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Nicole. Anyone else?
I'll share just to move along. Mine's a little different. I grew up in like the exact opposite. So a suburb of a major city, right? Toronto, very diverse visually. I'm working now in the neighborhood I grew up in, a child of immigrants. And so, you know, they really worked to assimilate. And my mom was an immigrant twice over because she had gotten married, moved to England, and then from England to here. So I don't think it's until now that I'm really unpacking how that showed up, right? And so while I don't have these like childhood moments of like, oh, feeling othered or what have you, I think it really wasn't until I entered the workforce that I'm like, oh, whoa, like I went to my undergrad at a predominantly white university outside of the city. And that was really my first like what is this? Like, this is the I know everybody opens up their lunch and we've all got different things. And so going there, while I was there, I was probably part of the most diverse, like I had the most diverse group of friends where we had one of everybody. So it wasn't until I entered the workforce there that I started to hear things and go, holy Hannah, like I have not ever heard this stuff growing up. I never experienced this stuff. And I was like, what? Huh? These are grown adults saying things. And at that time I was so young and naive that there were times where I felt safe enough to go, hey, that's not okay. Like, you're going to be a recruiter. You can't say brown people smell. Like, you just can't say that or assume. And so I didn't really know what I was putting on the line at that time. I just kind of did it because I didn't have anything on the line at that time. And there were times I didn't feel safe enough, like when, people were older than me, and I was like, but in my head, I was like, you can't say that. Like, oh man, this place is so racist. Now as a school leader, I work in the state, you all have something very different going on down there. We like to say we're inclusive and multicultural. And as a school leader in one of the most diverse districts in the country, the politics of it is something I'm really struggling with. We have a lot of senior leadership that looks diverse and looks representative. And what I'm learning, it's a very vulnerable thing to say, but melanin does not make you here for this cause. So navigating those politics, there's a lot of ownership politics. And then you hear these backdoor conversations of these people don't represent my beliefs. I have colleagues who go, I don't know what they're saying. They don't represent me and my family. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Melanin does not make you, that part. Yeah, I want to affirm you in hearing that for sure. Thank you. Anyone else? So thank you for sharing and being brave there. I know it's not easy, and some of us still may be processing, which we fully understand and embrace. And so as we think about those times where we didn't belong and how that made us feel, the impact that it has on our work, even now, and why we do the things that we do, holding on to that is so essential to help drive us forward. And so I want to continue on with our conversation, but I actually want to look at a case study. And I'm going to give us a moment. If you need the handout, you can also see it on your handout, and there's space to type on it or write on it. But in the next few minutes, what I want us to do is read this case study to ourselves. And then after this, we're actually going to do a breakout room very quickly with a partner for us to really process this together. And so read this case study to yourself. I want you to identify 3 things. What stood out to you in the case study? When you were thinking about the systems, policies, practices, culture, et cetera, at play here, how could care and inclusive practices support students and staff at this district? And then as a school leader or teacher, how would you prioritize addressing these issues if they were at your school? Okay, so I'm going to give us the next, let's say, 4 minutes to read the case study, 4 or 5 minutes to read the case study, and then we'll jump into a breakout space with a partner. All right, so I'm going to go on mute. Happy reading. We will come back at the 50 mark. So we're going to jump into a short breakout room, and would love for you to talk with your partner. Person A, if you have the earliest birthday in the year, would love for you to go first. So all my January friends, that's you. And so would love for you to share, what stood out to you? What are the systems and practices here at play? And as a school leader or teacher, how would you prioritize addressing these if it were at your school? Okay, so feel free to introduce yourselves when you get in there. We'll have about 5 minutes in breakout spaces. Be mindful of our airtime, and we will come back together in about 5 minutes. All right. For those who are just coming in, welcome. We're so excited to have you join us and with us. There is the link in the chat so that you can access the handout for today. But we are in the case study, and so would love for each group to share, something that you said or your partner said about the case study. And so what stood out to you? What are some of the systems and policies at play here? And then how would you prioritize addressing these at your school? So whatever group would like to start, feel free to come off mute and share what came up for you as you were looking at the case study.
I can go. So what stood out to me in this case study was that that last line where it says, school leaders have said they don't tolerate racism, and then that they regularly train teachers how to deal with the bullying. So my immediate thinking to that was, if you're saying you don't tolerate it, then action should be following that immediately. So that was like a red flag for me right there as I'm like reading that. And then when I'm thinking about the systems, the policies, the practices and stuff, I don't know if I didn't see where this was happening at, or depending on where it's happening, it really depends on whether or not those hardcore conversations have been happening in terms of like really getting down to like the root of the problem, because then you're owning like your own biases and like really internalizing like, okay, why am I not actively investigating this? Do I have an issue with this personally? Like, do I have to like open myself to, make myself feel vulnerable to be like, okay, yeah, I haven't been acting, actively in a sense, because I have these problems that I'm personally dealing with. So that was my whole take on like the whole like practices situation. What did I wrote down? It can't happen unless all parties are openly willing to accept that there is a problem. So if you're not going to accept that racism is happening, or the bullying, or if it's even an issue at all, like in those eyes from when I was reading it, like it seems like there isn't a problem. And then as a school leader, how would you prioritize addressing these certain issues? I had said reaching out to the leadership, and it's all a matter of like pressing them to see why there isn't a sense of urgency, so it's like if you don't see a sense of urgency, if it's not moving as fast as you, a person that really care deeply about something like this, once again, that's another red flag in my eyes. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that and agree. All parties, right, have to acknowledge and accept and have a plan moving forward. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. Let's have our other group share things that stood out, thinking about some of these systems. How would you prioritize addressing these issues?
This is very similar to what a lot of schools are going through right now. And prioritizing these issues is huge, but we agreed that getting people to recognize maybe their own bias is the first step in even acknowledging either these small 2 episodes or the larger systemic issues. And very similarly, we agreed that without that buy-in, it's really hard to get through to people. It's really hard to talk to people. And I would agree, if there's not a sense of urgency, then that is a red flag. But it's hard to combat a lot of the politics that come with being a school district leader, having power within your classroom as a teacher, but not necessarily having the power within the administration, or working against different factors from the district, or in my particular case, right, working against our board of trustees, which holds a lot of power and financial power within my institution.
Yeah. Thank you for naming that. I want to acknowledge, and affirm some of the things that you said were, the power dynamics at play here, right? financially, who has like access to those like resources and power, whether it's your board of trustees or the superintendents or either other leaders in your building. Like those are very real things that are happening and existing as we speak. So thank you for giving some voice to that. Anyone else? Anything that just like stands out to them from the case study or that they want to just uplift? Something that stood out to me was this line: they would rather us leave than to change. And as I was reading that, and also to give you context, this is a real case study. Like this is a real situation happening in a school in West Texas, and the state that I live. Unfortunately, there's a lot of things happening down here, but I think that this could be true in a lot of states and in countries, right? Like this same similar kind of thing. And I think about they would rather us leave than to change. And what does leaving do? Like, how does it actually help the students that have to stay? How does it help the students that are becoming better humans for the world? Like, what are we actually doing when we talk about not wanting to change systems to make them more inclusive for all students and for all stakeholders? And a lot of folks do leave, right? But again, what are the ramifications of folks by leaving? Leaving doesn't change, right? Policy change, action change, systems need to change, but not when people leave, things change. So that really stood out to me. And if I were a school leader, I would really prioritize like really understanding and getting a pulse and like understanding what are the issues? Like, how do people feel when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion? Do they feel a sense of belonging? So my first step probably would be to do a survey just to get an understanding of like, what are the stakeholders, community members, families, caregivers, students, what are they saying is true about the districts? And then using that data to really help inform some strategic solutions that can help them move the needle systemically. Anyone else would like to share about the case study before we move on? So going back to why this matters, right? We talked about this question, why does belonging matter for student learning and success? I want to talk about some benefits of belonging. Like when students feel that they belong, what actually helps schools thrive, right? So this was a recent study. I believe this was from Harvard School of Education. I pulled some statistics from this. But in this study, they said students who feel like they belong, they are more likely to have a higher rate of school attendance. Raise your hand if attendance has been a struggle since the pandemic for you and your students or your campus. I see lots of head nods. I see lots of hands. Absolutely, right? We want kids in schools. Next, being satisfied with their experience at school. How many of you have left a workshop, left a meeting, and it's just like, oh, that just felt like a waste of my time, right? It wasn't even satisfying. So how can we get kids to be satisfying? I see some head nods agreeing there. They also want to stay through graduation at their current district. So they're not moving districts, but they're staying and want to graduate with pride and show their school spirit at their current campus. And this last point, y'all, again, I have one of those aha moments of like, you are kidding me. This literally floored me. There's another study that was done that talked about the health advantages that when students experience and go to schools that value diversity, equity, and inclusion, they actually have greater health outcomes. I can't make this stuff up. Wild. But when students feel like they belong, it could actually improve their cardiovascular health. Love it. But what happens when students don't feel like they belong? These were some of the top reasons that students said they don't belong at school. One, they said school's not a good fit for me. And what do we know happens when students feel that school isn't a good fit for them? We know the school to prison pipeline is real. We know that gang violence is very real. We know that unemployment and all of these different health outcomes are very real, tied to education. We know that students don't feel belonging because they don't feel connected to their teachers. How are teachers and staff in the building? How are you as a school leader connecting with your stakeholders, connecting with students and their families? When students don't belong, they don't feel welcome here. They may not respect the school. You know, like there's just a myriad of things you could play here. But one of the reasons that stood out to me when they don't feel like they belong at school is because admin ignores bullying and racism. I wish I found the statistic for this, but I'm sure it's pretty high. If we were to ask students, do admin address incidents of bullying and racism? I'd be curious. Yeah, thank you, Alexia, for sure. So when we think about the benefits of belonging, and we think about the impact of when students don't feel like they belong or are cared for at school, right? There's some work for us to do and to process. So as we do that, and before we do that, I think it's a great time for a break. And so we're going to take a 5-minute break. Feel free to, this is about a 2-hour or so session. And so want to give you a chance to get up, to stretch, take a bio break, get some sunshine, get a snack. We're going to come back in 5 minutes. For me in Houston, that is the 13 after mark. And so let's come back in 5 minutes. I will see you back in 5. Happy break time, everyone. Welcome back. Little Diana Ross to kick us into part 2 of our experience this morning. So welcome back, everyone. We're going to go ahead and continue our learning together with time of reflection and assessment. So welcome back. Up until this point, we've been really kind of building our context and foundation around what does it mean to build caring and inclusive schools? Why does belonging matter in the first place? We rooted ourselves in some current context of the place of education today, and also thinking about our own experiences. What I want to take us to in the second half of our workshop is really leaning in towards more action and implementation, right? So how can we take our learnings? How can we think and process through them? And then what do we do leaving this space? And so in this next half of our workshop, we're going to start with self and school. In the work of DEI and in the work of equity and anti-racism, starting with ourselves is a critical piece of this solution. And so in a moment, I would love for you to access the self and school assessment. It looks just like this. If you are needing the materials on your handout and on your guide, it's also this blue link here under current state of affairs. You can click on this and it'll take you to this document. I'll also drop it here in the chat if anyone needs that again. Here you are. But what we're going to do in the next 8 minutes is we are going to complete this assessment. And this is a guide, right? Like this is not an exhaustive checklist of all the things you should be doing. And if you fill them out, yes, I have an equitable school. Like it's not that, but it really is a guide for us to be reflective on what are the things that I currently practice as an educator, and what does my school do in terms of these specific outcomes. So there's about 4 different outcome strands. So looking at equity, looking at identity, looking at diversity, justice, and action. I'm sorry, there's 5. How do I myself as an educator align to these things? Are these things true for me? If so, you're going to check off yes. And then I want you to put your school hat on. So as a school leader, as a school's administrator, or just like a general observer of your school campus and culture, do your school align and practice and live these things out? Okay. So start with self, analyze your school, and then there's some reflection questions on your actual guide here for you to answer if you get time to do them. Okay. So any questions before we jump into the self and school assessment? Beautiful. So we'll take, let's actually take 6 minutes. I think we can get it done in 6. Let's do this in 6 minutes. Here's the timer. And we will come back together in a breakout space after this time is over. Cool. Happy assessment time, y'all. Hey, welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Shout out to Mace in the 90s. Love that song. Welcome back, everyone. If you are still working through your guide, all good. You will have time in a minute to thought partner and to talk through this more in your breakout room. But again, want to leave this to the vote of the group. Would we rather stay in a whole group space or jump into a breakout room with a partner? Let's type a B in the chat for breakout room, W if we would like to share and talk through this whole group. Okay, beautiful. So looks like we're going to stay whole group. I love it. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing just for a moment so we can all see each other. Hey, y'all. And would love for us to share, right? Like things that came up for you. Let's start with self. Let's start with us first. As we look at this guide, what came up for you, right? Around some of the areas that you may have been able to check, like what are the things you're doing well? Like you can give yourself a pat on the back, a high five around, and where are the areas that you want to grow and continue to improve? So let's start with self, and feel free to come off mute and share some of your reflections from the guide.
So I would definitely say, for me, it would basically be, so for the first ones, the first few, the equity, identity, and diversity, I'm definitely, big on, because I do that, especially, with my students. I would definitely say the action, think about your school climate and classrooms in your building. So even though like that one, it was like it's kind of like teeter-tottered, because I know what needs to be done in the school and in classrooms to shift like the climate, but at the same time, like the case study, like the stakeholders that are involved, like where do they stand, and do they, are they like, how far do they want to go? Because obviously, equity, inclusion, and diversity is important for, on the school level, but like the social justice piece, to go further, like how would that kind of work? So that's basically what my reflection is on.
Yeah, Alexia, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, like love that you're doing a lot of things well, like the equity and identity piece, like shout out to you. And also I really appreciate you saying like, hey, there's room for me to grow in these areas. So I appreciate you naming that and taking ownership of that. Anyone else? We're staying in the self category before we talk about school. What things came up for you as you look at yourself and some of these areas around social justice and DEI?
I would echo Alexia in that a lot of the first few, I was like, okay, I got this. I know what I'm doing. And then towards the end, I found myself kind of teeter-tottering between both, or writing sometimes. And a lot of that for me was processing the systems in which I work in. So what can I do and where can I speak with confidence and allow my students to speak with confidence when there are systems in play that are working against me, when the potential threat of legal action or conversations from the top down hinder a lot of my ability to move around within the space. And so it's navigating that for myself, but also navigating that for my students is something I want to work on in action.
Thank you, Nicole, for sharing. And remind us, where are you based currently?
Sure, I'm in Syracuse, New York.
Okay, yes, thank you for the reminder. I would love to call in our folks that are outside of the US and internationally. Like, what does this look like for you all, right? Like, there's a lot of, not to get too far off track, we'll come back to self and we can still center that. But what does this look like in your context in South Africa and also in Canada? Like in the US, there's a lot of laws and policies trying to ban and restrict what educators are allowed to do and not do in classrooms. But what does this look like from an international lens? And Nomandi, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us, where you are based out of and give us a little context about you before you jump in.
Yep. My name is Nomandi Boy. I am based in Johannesburg, which is the economic hub of South Africa and the capital city in Gauteng. Yep, the landscape in this country with our history is we still have a long way to go. I guess when it comes to issues of DEI, we are reactive more than, proactive in terms of doing things. You uncover the issues of justice only when there's an incident. Hair is always an issue regarding diversity. Afro hair, it's a no-no at certain schools. It's when girls rebel and say we are standing our right to have the hair that we have and do it the way. Or in primary schools, because the public schools, people are kind of running away from them, deeming them to be providing inferior education, and there's mushrooming of private schools. And that's where, especially at the primary school level, there's groups that start. For an example, there's a Curo group that has got a whole lot of primary schools that have started, where they separate children according to color, where the majority of teachers that teach in those schools are the ones that ran away from, previously predominantly white schools into, running to those private ones. I mean, the ratio would be about 10 teachers as to one teacher, a black teacher in a school. Yeah. So issues of DEI, it's done at private schools, and it's also reactive in the sense that they will, want to tick the boxes to say, no, we are doing this. No, we are doing this for our leaders. No, we've attended the workshop. Yet at the experience levels with our children, it's a different story. They still experience those attitudes from teachers or even from the other children from school. So I know a consulting group which is run by a black and white woman, which mostly they've been called when incidents occur. I think at some stage one of it involved my daughter in terms of your racial languages that were used, the prejudices, the stereotypes that were used in class. So yeah, it's something that you raise your voice and you looking for collaborators, not being seen as that always troublemaker. Why do you see things that other people don't see? Or always looking for mistakes, you're looking for trouble, you're looking for problems, we're trying to expose what others don't actually see. Yeah. And there is always especially the young generations, the millennials, they are being roped into the systems as the alma mater of those schools, yet they leave as quickly as they've entered the system because they cannot stand. They have lived experience of what they had, and then if the system is still dishing that, they're quick to exit and then take academic posts where they write things about what their experiences. And people have also, the last one, organize themselves now into, social justice groups, the former girls of a private school, where they're taking the schools on in what they experienced as children in that school, and driving that the policies should change. And maybe if certain people nearly need to leave the school for the schools to really function and have way forward. So that those are my experiences.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that and giving us that context of what it's like in Joburg and all the way in South Africa. There's a lot of similarities and overlap that exists. And so thank you for sharing that. Anjali, would you like to share from the Canadian perspective and being in Toronto, what this is like?
Yeah, so Toronto is really kind of on its own. I think the rest of outside has very different experience from the urban experience. I was saying in a group earlier, self-wise, do you want me to talk about self or just the system? Okay, well, I'm good. we love to profess how multicultural we are. Our district has like a zero tolerance policy. A couple of years ago, we instituted a racism, bias, hate portal for, to report human rights, like incidences of racism, bias, hate. And then we all had to navigate that as school leaders. What went in it? Who responded to it? Initially, everything went in it, which meant you could be entering things every day the way high school students are with one another. Our students are no different than anywhere else in the world. Anyway, some themes started to emerge that are really troubling, that school leaders, I think, are feeling not supported with. We also have a rising problem of school violence, as everybody, I follow my US people on social media, and I think it's the same trends up here. And so there's a lot of analysis about that, but a couple of themes are emerging, one of which is the way in which senior team is responding to these incidences that go in, is that very quickly on the ground level, we felt like there was a hierarchy of harm, is what I'm calling it. Some things got instant action and a whole school approach, and we had district leaders on us to go, what are you doing, ABC, on every level, and it was very reactionary. And some things that went into that portal got crickets, despite actively following up, despite saying, hey, what are we going to do about this? How would you like us to respond? So that is making it hard for school leaders to navigate, because there doesn't seem to be a framework or a value system, or anyone at the board level saying, this is our commitment to how we will respond in a zero tolerance way to racism, bias, hate. This is what you can expect from us as a school board. I don't think that has been fleshed out. So we're really operating from a place of liability in terms of how we do business within the board. Certain groups have taken ownership over certain equity pieces. And so if you're not part of that group, you don't feel that you can engage with that work, or that you're not expert. That's one piece that I've heard from very senior level people, as opposed to from a place of learning. So I don't think there's mechanisms in place for school leaders on how to navigate these tensions. So I've just been selected for a committee for our Ontario Principals Council to sit on that and see what we can do to offer guidance to school boards with respect to that.
Yeah. So much to unpack there. And it is, again, there's a lot of overlap and similarities when it comes to not necessarily equipping folks with the skills to be able to live this out more practically and implementably. I'm also hearing just themes of how are we actually creating sustainable systems, right, that support equity? And what issues, right, go get a lot of attention, and which issues are silenced, right? And why that is. And so you all bring up a lot of really, really rich points. Anyone else want to share kind of their experience? And you can talk about self or at a school and systems level, what comes up for you as you look at this guide. Any other thoughts or comments?
I don't want to take up airtime, but just very 2 minutes. Language. Something I've noticed on the ground level and working with staff is whether it's mental health or race equity, it's, I didn't say anything because I didn't know what to say. And I'm like, then develop a script. I can give you a script in 2 seconds, have a script ready to go. We know we encounter certain things every day, have a script. So that's one point. I'll leave it there.
Thank you for sharing. Anyone else?
I think that's huge. Anjali, when you said, are we operating from a place of liability or from a place of learning? And I think even hearing that phrasing, knowing it, but not being able to put it to words is huge. And I think I might actually take that phrasing and put it into the work that I'm doing. So I appreciate that, because coming from an institution that is very small, very privatized, often we operate from a place of liability rather than from a place of proactive care.
This is so good. I love this conversation right now, and just also being able to learn and listen in from other educators from across the world, literally, is important, and it's really going to help push us forward. So as we think about this guide, right? As we think about like what this looks like practically, there are some people that love like those practical, tangible steps, and DEI isn't always like that. But for you wondering like, okay, what does this look like in practice for me to, again, create those systems and schools of care and inclusion? Here are just a few strategies, right, that we have pulled from research that have shown so much benefit. And so if you're wondering like, okay, well, what do I do next? Here it is, kind of spelled out for you, some steps that you can take around equity, identity, diversity, justice, and action, right? Something that I want to Okay, I'm back. I heard like a little beep and my house internet just cut off, but I'm back. So thank you for your patience and your grace. But as we think about these systems, right? Like this isn't easy work for us to do by any means. And so may you give yourself the grace, may you give yourself a little bit of love in knowing that these systems won't change overnight. But I want to be able to provide, again, more practical solutions around how do we take the learning here and actually make it more applicable. So that's what we're going to spend the last half of our workshop on, is really thinking about some strategies. So for practicality, again, implementation, these are just a few suggestions that our team has come up with here at Teach Woke around what does this look like in practice? And so here are a few ways, and these are not in any like particular order. These are just, again, some ways in which we can implement more care and inclusion at school. Some of these are questions that I want you to like do some homework around and like process and think through. But the first is around community voice. So when we think about creating and building safe, caring, inclusive schools, who are the people and the stakeholders that shape your rules and your policies and help inform your school decisions or your classroom decisions? I'm gonna leave y'all, let that marinate. The next thing I want you to consider is doing your own work. I'm so grateful that you were here today. I am so grateful that y'all woke up on a Saturday and are here with me. However, the work doesn't stop here. It is a daily commitment. So what are you learning and unlearning about your bias, about your privilege, about how you show up? That actually helps create safer, more inclusive, caring school communities. Next is to listen. When is the last time you asked your students or your community what they love about your campus or your classroom and what they would change? How are you getting that feedback and data and using that to inform your decisions about what things you do and do not do at your campus? Next, fostering respect and acceptance. What you are silent about sends a loud clear message. The things that you decide to address or not address, send a message about who and what matters in your classroom and in your school campus. There's so much I want to say here, but I'm going to keep it going for time. Next, take an interest. What do your students love? What do their caregivers love? And make a point to regularly check in with students to see, right, what they're interested in. And lastly, cultivating community. This one is huge. So as you look at your classroom, if you're still in the classroom, or if you look at your school as an administrator or district leader, what does your school look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like when people walk in the building? What does it smell like when people come in? Now you might be like, smell, what does that have to do with anything? Scent is so important. These are ways that we can move the needle and begin to start doing and digging our own work. And so these are just questions I want to leave you with as like a way for you to think through some different strategies around care and inclusion. So to move us into some action planning and to some thought partnering together, I want to leave some time at the end of our workshop really thinking about two different paths, right? How do we take this information and begin to start thinking through and working through some of these questions for implementation? So we believe in choice. Y'all have seen that as a theme the entire session. And so I'm going to allow you to choose two different paths, okay? First path is for you to go back through the school and self-assessment. And I want you to find an area that you may not have checked. So maybe it's an action, or maybe it's an identity or equity. I don't know. But I want you to think about an area, one, just pick one small step that you want to prioritize in the next 7 days. How do you want to get better at this? And so the reason that I say small step is because it's the granular, small, atomic steps that allow us to move the needle sometimes. And so what I want you to do is whatever goal you set, so maybe if it is in, I don't know, diversity, right? I want you to choose one of those strands. And I want you to think of 3 small granular steps that you can take this week to begin implementation and improvement. So what might that look like? Maybe it's bringing in a new text into your classroom, right? That shows different perspectives. Maybe it's pulling in some history, or maybe it's adding a new language to a math problem that's more inclusive of your students. I don't know what that looks like for you, but what does it look like in 3 very small granular steps for you to move and do that in action? Okay, that's the first path. The second path is for you to answer the wrapping up question. So there's some questions at the end of your guide, and I will drop that link again in the chat if you need it. But I want you to choose a path. You know what works best for you. And so I'm going to give you a choice to go ahead and decide what that looks like. For those who want to like thought partner with someone and like need someone to like think through some strategies with, I'm going to open up one breakout room for you to be able to join that. And if you're like, nope, I like solo dolo time, I need processing time, then you can stay here in this main breakout room for you, and I will keep it silent just to honor people's learning styles. But again, choose your path here in a moment. Path 1, go back to the school and self. Path 2, answer the wrapping up questions, and then we'll come back together in about, let's say 6 to 7 minutes. Does that work for everyone? See some thumbs, see some head nods. Great. So let me get the breakout room situated for those who are choosing to go into a breakout room. Beautiful. I will group number 1. Great. And let's set the timer for that. Awesome. So with this, I will go ahead and open up breakout rooms if you want to work with someone. If you want to be independent and work solo, please feel free to stay here in the main space, and we'll come back together in about 7 minutes. Hey everyone, welcome back. Welcome back. I do not like cutting people off, but I want to have us be able to share some ideas, and I know that wasn't a lot of time, and that's intentional, right? The reason that I said small granular steps is because I don't want it to feel this overwhelming, burdensome thing, but it's like, no, I feel really good about like the one thing that I can leave here doing. And these are the 3 small actionable ways that I can do that. And with that being said, I want to just open it up to us to share our ideas. Like, what are those action steps we're thinking about taking, leaving this space? What does it look like for you to take those 3 small granular steps? So I'm going to go on mute. Would love for people to just share their brilliance and their genius. And if you didn't get that far, no stress at all. You can just write down some other people's nuggets. It's all good. That's why we're here. So feel free to share, like, what are the steps you're taking, like leaving this space? Like, what does this look like for you?
So for me, it's curating the way in which I am going to approach a lot of the DEI work that I'm doing at the school. So right now, we are trying to implement a new diversity statement for our school. And so a lot of that has to include buy-in. So taking a lot of what was being said today from creating a survey from the students, which I have kind of ad hoc pieces from students, but not one piece, or taking the idea of operating under a liability rather than operating under care, and curating and facilitating a conversation around those ideas so that people that may not have as much experience with DEI or as much buy-in are able to understand a lot more of where I'm coming from in the context of where I'm coming from when we need to create new systems within our institution that challenge tradition.
Thank you so much for sharing. That's really beautiful work. And I love just like the practicalness of that. And just like, hey, I'm going to make a survey. I have like some pieces and parts, but I'm going to like make the full survey. Love it. Amazing. And I would actually love for all of us just to share like maybe one nugget or maybe something that resonated with them from this experience, just so we can hear your genius and brilliance.
I'll go. Earlier in this, I think it was Tisa who said, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who said like unpacking why I'm not acting on something. And later on it was, like, why are you silent about this? And when we were doing the surveys, the language pieces came up for me, as like, am I really giving students and staff those opportunities to develop that language? And it's come up in staff, in things I've been responding to with staff these last couple of weeks. So I think I'm gonna just reprioritize that. And we had planned, again, just finding ways to infuse it, whether I'm working with student equity groups or even in just nuggets and staff meetings that, okay, like this week's problem. So that's one piece. The other thing I'm taking away is just, it's really helped me crystallize some of the system level work that I'm hoping to do too. So that's been good.
Yeah, if I may go, what I was thinking in terms of the action that I'll take, I just identified somebody that is in the doing the work. She's an academic, and before I could come to this workshop, I think weeks ago, I've realized that work is happening at a small scale. There are pockets of beautiful work that's being done, but I think we can start with maybe collaboration and understanding who does what and how are they doing it and how we can replicate it. That it will be a conversation.
Beautiful. Thank y'all for sharing. Tisa and Alexia?
I think for myself, what really resonated with me is like taking that interest in like what the scholars and parents actually like. It's just like for so many reasons, this is like as like educators and like administrators, we think we know the answer instead of like fully investing in trying to figure out, okay, we're there to serve we're there to serve the families, you know. So I think that small step that I'm going to integrate, especially with me being like the grade level lead of my grade, like for my 7th grade, I think I'm going to implement doing a parental and scholarly survey, asking them some questions and stuff like that, because then that'll kind of like gear up for us to understand like their thinking, especially going into, you know, next year and stuff. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
So I would definitely say the language piece, like just like to see like what kind of language is in place. I'm going to say like as staff, as individuals, and also the collaboration piece of who does what in the organization. So my school, we're part of we have like, I think like under like the same organization, I think there's like 5 or 6 schools. So like find out what is kind of like going on also in like the other schools along with our school.
Yeah, beautiful. All these ideas I saw folks taking notes and nuggets with them. So that really encourages me as I think about the work that is ahead. And so as we close out the rest of our session, there's just a few things that I want us to do. And that is first think about like the now what, right? Like, so what, now what is kind of how we live and think through, you know, DEI. It's like we've gone through the session, great. But like, what does that mean as far as the next steps that are actually more concrete, right? You have some very practical strategies and also some ideas from other folks here in the room. That's incredible. And I love this meme. So what do we do now? You might be wondering, this little girl is the cutest. And so part of that is our work here at Teach Woke. And so if there are things that we can do as an organization to support you, we are happy to do that. And I wanted to share just a few pieces of like our work and how we can collaborate. If you enjoyed today's session, if you thought that this was a value add to you, we serve clients all over the US and hopefully internationally very soon. But we work with some of the most incredible organizations. And I actually need to put our school partner, Veritas. TISA is actually one of our school partners. And so thank you for being here and just showing up and supporting. So this is not even me like, you know, telling a tale, like we actually have someone here that can speak to our work and experience. But 98% of folks would recommend one of our workshops to another school or to a colleague. 97% of educators say that they can implement what they learned within 24 hours, which is important to us. And we have trained over 1,000+ educators in our time of learning at Teach Woke. And so here are a few reasons that you may need our support if you wish to improve both student well-being and learning outcomes. If you need a personalized DEI strategy to really help you move from theory to implementation and action, which a lot of us talked about. If you have 1,000,001 ideas and challenges, but you need to help prioritizing where do we kind of begin this work first? What does this look like for our unique situation and district? If you are tired of DEI PD that are not engaging or sustainable and implementable, and if you are finally ready to be the anti-racist school leader, the teacher that you have always wanted to be, we would love to help support that effort and that initiative. And so here's a few of the services that we offer to our school partners and districts and even university clients. We do DEI workshops just like this one, but you get to choose based off of your school and organization's needs. We have over 20 amazing workshops that we've curated and even offer customized workshops for your campus based on the need. We offer culturally responsive teacher training and coaching, equity audit, strategic planning, and newly, we have a new gamified social emotional learning platform called Justly coming out in the next few months if you are interested in that. But moreover, I could say a lot of things, but you came here today on a Saturday because I believe that you are ready to make your schools and continue making your schools anti-racist, inclusive, and more transformative for your students, for your families, for your staff. And so here's what a few of our clients have to say about our work. These are real receipts, and I love this gift so much to show that. But I want to share from one of our school partners in California, Ms. DeGratis, and she says, I love the energy of the workshop facilitator. I also love that the workshop involved both discussion and action. We actually created ideas for things to do with our students and take action and do the work as a community. And so as we think about the work, like this work is so deeply personal to me. And also, we just deeply believe in creating a more liberatory world for all. And so the investment of working with Teach Woke, and even just for being here today, we will set up a customized call with you. And for joining today and by booking by March 31st, we're actually offering $750 off any of our workshop packages. And so when we meet to discuss like what your school needs are, we will customize a package just for you. And by attending today, I have everyone's name and email. You'll get $750 off of your workshop experience and package. And so as my girl Oprah says, you can save money, you can save money, and you can save money. If you book by March 31st, and this is an exclusive discount we're offering for today. To wrap up, I want to just say, if not now, then when? As educators, we cannot be neutral, and our silence actually is harmful. And so whatever the thing is that you have committed to today, whatever small action step you need to take to get 1% better, to take back to your campus, to take back to your students, now is the time. Laws, policies, governments, they are banning books and things as we speak. We do not have time to wait. We do not have time to sit and hopefully make someone else make it happen, but we have the power within ourselves to do the things that we have always wanted to do, and that is to create more equity and inclusion in our world. And so how can you book your DEI experience with Teach Woke? We've made it really simple and streamlined. One, you can scan this QR and schedule a free DEI strategy call with myself or a member of our team so that we really understand like your needs and we customize everything specifically for you. Then we will send you a proposal where you get to select literally dozens of workshop offerings and even coaching sessions that align to your community's needs. And then you engage and get ready to do the work. You sit back and engage in this, and then we give you some tools and strategies to move forward with the experience. And so we hope that you can continue to think about us as an option for your campus, as we have about 10 spots left for the 2023-2024 school year. We're booked and building on. I'm so grateful and blessed for that. And so would love for you to book with us today. And so with that, we are going to wrap up with our exit survey to give us feedback on this session and experience. Feedback drives our work. And so I'm going to ask that you take 2 minutes to complete the exit survey. And then schedule your free DEI strategy call. If you want to talk through this more, if you also just need some help and support, you already have someone you work with, great. We want to just support the work you're already doing. And then lastly, please check your inbox in the next 2 to 3 business days. You will get your CPE hour certification just for attending, for you to share with your district partners and whoever else you need to. So feel free to scan the QR code. After this, we just have one more thing, and that is the raffle of who's going to win the 60-minute free DEI session. And so I'll give us 2 minutes to do this, and then we'll do the raffle, and then we'll wrap up. All right. So thank you for taking the exit survey. If you're still working on it, please go ahead and finish. It's super, super helpful to our team. And the moment we've all been waiting for. And so we are going to be giving away a free 60-minute virtual DEI experience for your staff and team. We can talk logistics and all of that, but you'll win a free DEI workshop from Teach Woke, because that's how deeply we believe in this work. Not that we do things for free all the time, but because we love it and we want to make an impact, we are happy to do that. And so with that being said, I want to give a drum roll, please. And I'm super, super excited for this winner. And also, if you want to keep in touch, like if you have other questions you have after this, like please email us at info@teachwoke.com. Follow our Instagram. You can send us a DM at teachwoke. We absolutely love thought partnering and helping just support this work and this movement. And so with that being said, let's get to the raffle winner of a free 60-minute DEI virtual experience. So we love the wheel of names. So we're going to do this equity style. I think everyone is in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, we are all here. So let's do this. Let's click to spin. And the winner is... Okay, Normandy, congratulations. Congratulations. Normandy, we will chat offline. I will send email next week so that we can get this all situated for you, but congratulations. It was super close there. I thought Tisa might have went away with it. But either way, congratulations, Normandy. Excited to offer this to your school and campus and however we can be supportive. And thank you all so much for the work. If you were like, Alicia, this was great, and we already have someone, or like, we're not really interested in this time, how you can support our work just by this being a free experience today is we want to ask you to share this with 3 educators or school leaders that you know. And for every person that you refer that gets a contract with us, we will give you $250 just for being a greater supporter of Teach Woke. And so you can scan this QR code or send them our link tree with all of our information. But thank you for being here today. I'm so, so, so grateful for all of you. May you go and continue the work, because the work starts now. Happy Saturday, everyone. We hope to be in touch. Nomadi, I'll follow up in a few days, and have a great day, everybody. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Take
Have
care,
a great
Alicia.
Saturday.
I'm going to keep following you. I'm on IG, so School Wellness Collective. That's me.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you for following and supporting. I appreciate you.
No problem. Take care.
All right, bye-bye.